Welcome to the Black Belt Business Podcast. My name is Matthew Brenner, and today I'm with one of my good friends, Hannah. Hannah, say what's up.
What's up? Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, and I'm really glad to have you on. I know we met, I think we met a couple years back, but more recently we became friends over the past year or so when we did a business class together through Goldman Sachs. And we'll talk about that soon. But first, give us a little bit about your business, your background.
Totally. So, I'm Hannah Westerman. I am the founder and creative director of Avenue West. Avenue West is a full spectrum design agency based in Philly, and we specialize in launches, campaigns, and events. And we offer everything from graphic design, illustration, social media, website design, environmental design, and design of all sorts.
How do you think someone who runs a martial arts school or small business like it might benefit from services like yours?
Yeah, totally. So I think there's a few ways. The first is branding, finding your visual identity, the way that you connect with your audience. So really focusing on branding and messaging, building a website that's easy to use and draws in customers and also converts them into customers. And then if you have events, having an experience that matches the feel of the event. So posters, social media, banners, anything you would need for that event. Maybe that's merch, swag. We can all help with that.
So most business owners, even specifically a martial arts school, they might think, "Oh, I'll just go to Canva, right?" Or I don't need that kind of stuff. Why do you feel like that's so important to hire, let's say, a company to do it like you?
Yeah, so Canva can do some stuff for you for sure. However, Canva doesn't know you. They don't get to know your goals, they don't get to know your audience. So having a human touch who can also, someone who can tell you that when you're designing a logo, it doesn't have to be so complicated. It can really just reflect the essence of your business. Someone that can actually give you feedback on the design work that you're doing. I think for flyers, I'm going to say it, Canva's fine.
Yeah.
It's totally fine. But if you're doing something bigger, like branding or a website design, it's really important to have an expert who can help guide you through that process because it's nuanced and it's all about speaking to your audience. And AI or Canva can't help you do that.
So you'll know what the person really wants when you're creating this and keep it in mind, not just like, oh, here's a template that people use for something else, and now just put your business name and number in it.
Exactly.
So do you do this generally for like smaller businesses, for bigger businesses?
Yeah, so we work with a pretty wide variety of businesses. So we work with nonprofits, corporations, and we also work with a lot of individuals who are starting their own initiatives. So we work with professional athletes, we work with industry leaders to create their own projects, passion projects, initiatives, events,
Mm.
etc.
So I know some of the professional athletes that you've
Mm,
worked with, so I
yes.
have to bring that up because some of my favorite athletes in the world. Can you talk a little bit about some of the athletes you've worked with?
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 years ago, we started working with Jason Kelsey, and we helped him
Go Birds.
go birds.
Okay.
Absolutely, 7-1. We're all very proud. We helped him start a foundation and build an apparel brand.
Mm.
So this was about a 2-year engagement where we, did strategy, helped Jason really kind of narrow his focus and figure out what he was trying to accomplish. Then we branded the foundation, built a website. We branded the apparel brand, worked with an illustrator and a team of photographers, videographers to create this whole suite of products, built a shop for him, and then we planned a launch party and launched the foundation.
So how did he find you or you find him?
We have the same lawyer.
Okay, cool. So your lawyer introduced you.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Keep that lawyer.
He's
What an amazing
great.
hookup.
He's great. Love him.
So were you a big football fan before this or
No,
no?
no.
Okay.
I'm an only child and I have two cousins who are like brothers to me. And I just remember as a little kid, they would want to watch sports and I never wanted to watch sports. And they would sit there and every time I wanted to talk to them, they'd be like, shh, come on, we're watching sports. And I just associated that with like, okay, sports means no one's going to listen to me. And I would just like cry. It was like football came on, I would just cry.
Oh my gosh.
So as an adult, even when my now fiance would watch football before this, I would just be like, why can't you pay any attention to me? So anyway, this experience
During the game.
I'd
Okay.
be
Yeah.
like, Josh, can we just talk about something? Like, tell me about your day. And he's like, Hannah, we're watching a game. I'm like, can we just? So anyway, it would drive me nuts
Yeah.
because I didn't understand that like you had to focus on it. It didn't feel like a very like joint experience. So with this project, I got into football. I started paying attention to it and watching the games. And the cousin who I mentioned before, he actually taught me what was happening in football. So
cool.
we went to a bar one day. He brought a notebook and a pen, and he's like, okay, Hannah, we're going to talk about like turnovers, possession, like how you get points. He like drew the football field for me. So I started to really learn football. I can now use like jargon and everyday language. I bring up the
nice.
bye week every so often.
Just drop that in there. I know what a bye week is.
Yeah, I know what a bye week is.
Yeah.
Nobody worry. So now I'm more into football. I've been to 2 Eagles games now.
Did you get hooked up with tickets or?
I did.
Oh,
Yeah,
very cool.
it was very nice.
You weren't starstruck when you met him because you didn't really know much about football. So it's kind of like just some giant guy.
I did not know who Jason Kelce was.
Okay.
Yes.
Like if I met him once, actually.
You did meet him once?
Yeah, some sort of event in Philly, some fundraiser thing. I went over, got a picture with him. He was super sweet and kind, which he just seems like a very genuine person, which I think is why everyone loves him, right? And like I was starstruck, and I still have that picture, like of my favorite, And so for you, it's just like, oh, just some guy. I think that's almost a benefit as a business owner because now you get to speak to him as a person, not as like a fan, and then later you become a fan.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think it really helped me to be more objective in our process because, I think, if I were to work with one of the people like if Tina Fey called me and was like, why don't you do my branding? Like, I'd just be like, any idea she said, I'd be like, great, Tina, would love that. We'll just do that. And I think that I was able to step back and be more objective, not be such a people pleaser. And I got to know him as a human, and he's delightful. He's so kind. He brings so many ideas to the table. He's like such a visionary. That's one thing that's just remarkable about Jason is that he has a million ideas. There's always new ideas, and he can like get into the creative weeds with you. And I really appreciated that.
So how long does a project like that take from start to finish? With branding, the website, apparel design. It's called Underdog Philly, right? And I have one of the hats. I'm very proud of. And whenever I see people wear it, I'm like, Hannah designed that shit. Nice.
Yeah, totally.
So how long does that typically take?
So I would recommend that process take about a year, 12 months to go from strategy to launch. Now, because the football season was starting, we had to kind of condense it down.
Why a year? It sounds so long.
Because if you think about strategy, figuring out, why are you starting a foundation? What's the purpose? Starting with like just a seed. Okay, we want to help kids in Philly. Great. So, do we want to help them with education? Is this sports? Is this music? Kind of narrowing our focus. Then we get into the method of how are we raising money? Is this an apparel brand? Are we selling products? Are we having events? Figuring out the method. Then from there, you have to figure out the tax structure, the legal entity. Then we move into naming it. So naming is a whole thing in itself. Figuring out the trademark, making sure the trademark goes through. Trademarks take a while. So it's really great if we can start that like a couple months in. So then all of that probably takes a couple months. That could even take 4 months. Then you go into branding. I recommend around 2 months for branding. Website design, probably another 2. Website development, 1 to 2. Then it's figuring out social media, and then figuring out a rollout plan to launch it. So, it can take a little less, it can take a little more, but for it to be truly methodical and to go through all of the necessary steps to get the entity set up correctly and to have all your ducks in a row, I really recommend about 12 months to do that.
So how would you convince an entrepreneur of that or someone who runs a business? Like if you came to me and you're like, hey, it's going to be 12 months. Like 12 months,
Yeah.
like that's like a billion years in entrepreneur world.
It is
So
a billion. It's a
yeah.
lifetime.
Yeah. So how do you tell someone like, hey, like this process, if you really want to do it right, it's going to take 12. How do you convince them of that?
Well, I think that the first thing I would say is that putting all of this work in on the front end is going to mean it's a lot smoother on the back end. I would also say that if you're trying to get something up and running that quickly, the first thing I would ask is why? Is this an issue of revenue? Is this an issue? Also, I will say this is for a foundation.
Mm.
I would say something very different if you were just like branding a company.
Okay.
Yeah. For a
That'd be shorter time.
It'd be a shorter period of time.
Okay.
Because I mean, if you've already got your company set up, like that's the main
This
part.
is the foundation from scratch.
From
would be 12.
scratch.
Okay, so that makes more sense.
So if you're coming to me and you're saying, I have a company, I've got an LLC, it has a name, now we need branding. That's a totally different story. Because then we just go through branding and a website and social media. And so maybe that's, 6 months. But if you're coming to us trying to figure out what even is the idea? What are we trying to even do? Who is this money for? Who are we supporting? Is this based in Philly? Is this a global thing? Is this a national thing? And then figuring out, setting up the entity, the tax structure, and then getting your trademark and, actually setting it up as like a 501c3 or if it's a foundation or whatever it is.
Okay, so that makes more sense.
Yes.
So if you're coming into a small business, let's say, I don't know, a pizza restaurant.
Yes.
Is that someone you would typically take as a client, or they're typically not going to be clients?
We love working in the food space. So happy to work at the pizza restaurant.
Okay.
I would say if that place is already, established, branding usually takes between 2 and 3 months. Building a website, 3 to 4 months to do it quickly or to do it like correctly.
Okay.
Granted, we have lots of people who come to us and say, we have like 3 weeks, we need a brand. So
You'll do it that way.
Sometimes.
But you prefer not to.
We prefer not to. It just, the more time we have to really put it all together and to do it right, the more longevity that brand will have.
So what mistakes do you feel like a lot of businesses make, especially small businesses, with their branding or website? Like what are mistakes you have to come in and fix?
Yeah, I would say 2 things. The first is timing. I know that for small businesses, everything is often urgent. You need something quickly. You need to get things moving and keep them moving. I would say if you can be patient and really take the time to find the right designer for your brand and go through the process, it's going to be a better result. The second thing is with branding specifically, branding is not just a logo. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what branding is. So a logo, to use the example of like a person, the logo is the face. But the other things to consider are what that person is wearing, how they speak, how they move. So with branding is the whole picture. So, another big part of it is messaging, figuring out how you actually speak to your audience, the tone of voice that you use, the colors, the fonts, the patterns or motifs that you use. Those are all things. So I see a lot of small businesses come to me and say, I want a brand that says that we're a pizza place, that we're in New Jersey, that we have vegetarian pies, we're gluten-free, and I want my dog somewhere in the logo.
Okay.
And it's like, oh, okay, great. And, the logo doesn't have to say everything for your business. I think one of the biggest things that I try to communicate to clients is that the logo is one opportunity to portray your business, but there's so many other opportunities to communicate with your audience,
Mhm.
like through the words that you use, like the tone of voice, the colors you use, the fonts that you use, your website. So your logo doesn't have to have everything in it. Just have it be suggestive or explicit, but have it be simple. Have it have one or two messages,
Mm.
no more.
Simple, usually better.
Definitely,
Definitely.
always.
So let's say you have a pizza shop that they're thinking about doing this, but they're like, I'm not sure how branding is even going to help me sell pizzas.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or how about we move to martial arts school? Because that's obviously my more expertise. Right.
Sure.
So I'm like, okay, well, we have students that come in, we pay for ads. Yeah, we have a logo. We kind of have a color scheme we stick to. But what am I missing? Like, what part of branding that you think most likely I'm doing wrong, or maybe you've seen I'm actually doing wrong, which is totally fair. I'm happy to hear that too, that you think would make a tangible difference in growing the business?
Great question. I would say that the two things are if you have a cohesive brand that appears on everything, flyers, website, your logo, your merchandise, the first thing that comes from that is brand recognition and awareness. So being recognizable. So, like, your green, that seems to be like every time I see that green pop up on your Instagram, like the little highlight
Yeah.
circle, like I know that's you.
Okay. I'm doing something right.
You're doing something
Whew.
right.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Good.
know we talked about that color too.
You helped me pick
Yeah,
it.
yeah. But having brand recognition is really critical because there's a million martial arts studios out there. So to set yourself apart, you need to continue to show up in the same way and be consistent. People respond really well to consistency. It makes them feel safe, it helps them build trust, and it also creates that kind of brand awareness and recognition.
Mm. Can you give me an example of like a brand with like a certain color that like, oh, when I think of this color, I think of this brand, or vice versa?
Yeah. Well, I think that just looking at the like social media giants of the
Okay.
world, think about that gradient on Instagram,
Okay.
the like purple to yellow.
Yeah.
Like when you see that color, that's pretty
You
much
know right away.
Instagram.
Yeah, that's a good point. Or I guess Coca-Cola is like that deep red.
Deep red.
I don't know if
That
deep is the right
font.
word, but
It's
oh,
like like that font.
yeah, the
You know, that
calligraphy sort of
that will
thing.
always be Coca-Cola.
Mm.
If you think about like Slack, you know, that shape that they use,
Yeah, yeah.
like that's a motif they use all over the place.
Mm.
Google's color palette, I feel like that's pretty recognizable and it
Yeah,
shows up in
everywhere.
even like the I for iPhone, iCloud, iPad. Like that's a simple thing that just that little letter I, like you know, if you
Mm.
put I in front of anything, it's Apple.
It's Apple. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Really, really cool.
Yeah.
So do you think it's more important for bigger businesses and less important for smaller ones? Do you think it's equally as important,
I think
like
that
branding in general?
yeah, I think you have to consider your industry. So, figuring out first like is your industry saturated with businesses like yours? Like I can say like for me, 100%, there's a million design agencies out there. I think for martial arts studios, there's also a lot, and I wonder how many there are in the area. Who are your competitors? Getting like a understanding of the landscape, you know, check out their logos, see what's going on, see
Mhm.
how you can stand out from them. But I think it's important to treat your business, large or small, with the same kind of regard in terms of branding.
Mm. And that's actually really smart. I didn't think about it that way because we will always talk about, hey, you want to run your business, whether it's successful or not, as if it's successful, like run it the same type of way. You never want to run it like a mom and pop. You want to run it like it's a full thriving business, even if you're not there yet, right? You
Yeah.
want to run it that certain way. So don't cut costs in certain areas
Mhm.
because you feel like, oh, we're not there yet. Well, if you run it that way, then it will be that way.
Right.
And I never thought about that in terms of branding the way you just said it. So
Yeah.
that's really interesting. So when you work with someone who's like celebrity, like Jason or sports celebrity,
Mhm.
are all your friends like asking you like, "Hey, how do I hang out with this person?" Or like what happens with that? How do you handle that?
I, uh I so far, no one's asked me to, like, hang out with them, which I'm grateful for because the answer would be no.
Yeah.
But I do have people who, like so many people are like, "Oh my god, your boys are playing right now. They're doing so good." Like, they keep referring to them as my boys. I'm just like, "Yeah, the Eagles are doing great."
Yeah.
So I get a lot of people who are like, just tuned into the Eagles. I
Yeah.
have to say, since I've started working with a couple of the Eagles players, I have, like, so many family members who are now Eagles fans.
Ah, that's amazing.
So, like, there's, like, 10 new Eagles fans out there who, like, never would have thought to be Eagles fans before.
Yeah.
So that feels pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's no different than like now there's new people who are football fans that were just Taylor Swift fans before. Right
Exactly.
now they are.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
vice versa, like, now there's people listening to Taylor Swift who, like, probably never would have thought to do that
Yeah.
because they
Yeah.
just love Travis.
So do you have any other projects coming up with Jason or their industry or their sorry, their not their industry, their
Team?
their team.
Yeah. So right now I'm working on the Christmas album.
Mm.
This is the Eagles Christmas album. So it's Connor Barwin is
Can
the
you tell us what that is though? Because I
yeah,
feel like you and I know, but someone who's listening another part of the country might not know.
totally. Okay, so last year, 3 Eagles players, Jordan Mailata, Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, and Connor Barwin, who managed the project, made a Christmas album. And they sang on this album. So this was, 3 big dudes singing Christmas music on this album, and it blew up. It sold out 3 times. It was a record, it was a vinyl. It was beautiful bright green vinyl. And we got to do the artwork for the cover. We did the website and the social media marketing rollout. And it just like captured the hearts of Philadelphians.
Mm.
So this year, we're doing it even bigger. So we're ordering like 3 times as much records. And it's a gatefold. So I'm really excited. It means it's a front, a back, and then it opens in the center.
Mm.
So you
So
can
you're doing
get
the artwork for the front, back, and the center.
yes.
Or design. Okay.
Yeah. So
cool.
the center is this drawing of let me go back, explain a little bit more, and then I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
So the theme of this year, it's called A Philly Special Christmas. That was what it was last year.
Okay.
But this year it's A Philly Special Christmas Special.
Okay.
So
Was that your idea?
I think that was Charlie's idea. Charlie Hall is the musical director. He's the drummer in the War on Drugs.
Okay.
And he's been the musical director for this whole project. And
Yeah.
it's fantastic.
It's so funny because I feel like if I came up with that idea, they'd be like, that's so dumb.
I know.
But as someone who's obviously like amazing in their industry, then it's like, oh, genius.
Genius.
Yeah.
And it's so goofy to say special so many times.
Yeah.
So the idea is that they're putting on a Christmas special. So this year they've hired a stop motion animation firm called Unpop. It's Philly-based shop, and they're creating a 9-minute stop motion animated short telling the story of these guys as football players becoming showmen and putting on a musical. And it takes place at the Met Philly stage. So it's like this big, beautiful, historic stage. And it's honestly hilarious. And so
You've already seen it.
I've seen most of it.
Okay.
They're wrapping it up right now, but it's incredible. And these puppets are just like so detailed and incredible. It's very cool.
So the puppets look like the players?
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
So when you do stuff like this, and you go to pitch to them, are you pitching per project, or are you saying, here's my hourly rate, I'll add it up like as like an attorney? Because you've done all this stuff with him in the past, but now you're adding things on as you go along. How does pricing structure work for something like that?
Yeah. So I always do flat fees
Okay.
for things like this. If I'm just doing website edits or something that's very much based on time, I'll charge our hourly rate. But for the most part, I do flat fees. It helps us budget. It helps them budget, the clients. And so we basically scope out the entirety of the project, figure out what deliverables are included, and then I mostly charge by the deliverable. So I add up those costs and then come up with a flat fee. And we
Did it
usually,
all in advance.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Cool.
then we have a contract and a scope set so that it's also helps us manage the project.
Mm. And are these typical projects usually 6 months or longer, or some of them are short if they just need something smaller?
I have shorter projects. Like this project, we started this in July and it's going to go till January. So, I would say 6 months is pretty typical for a project. However, if we're just doing branding, then it's going to be 2-3 months,
Yeah.
things like
You know,
that.
in the martial arts business, there's always a controversy about whether you should have contracts or not. Some schools do, some schools don't. In terms of our clients, like our members or students,
Interesting.
right? So some schools will say, "Hey, no contract. You can cancel whenever. You just call or email, or hit a button on an app." And some say, you can't cancel until your membership is completed, right?
Wow.
So our schools tend to lean more towards contract based. Like we'll have a 6-month contract or a 12-month contract, and their memberships, we call them that. Like there's a 6-month membership, there's a 12-month, and
Yeah.
the reason being that like we want it to be goal based, right? So this 6-month membership gets you this belt, this 12-month gets you this belt. If afterwards you decide you don't want to do it, great,
Yeah.
but you have to at least stick out to your goal, right?
I
But
love
no
that.
matter how great the contract is, people are always gonna leave. And even if you have like 30-day cancellation or 7-day cancellation, no cancellation fee or whatever, people always get mad no matter what, right? Like
Wow.
no matter what box you have them fill out or what they said they heard or didn't hear, when
Yeah.
it's time to cancel, they just go, "I don't care, cancel it," and they just get upset no matter what. So have you ever been like burned in a contract situation?
Definitely. I started writing really good contracts after I had a client, and this was actually supposed to be a 12-month engagement. And about 9 months in, they basically were like, "We're not going to pay you anymore. We're done." And
How many months in?
9.
9.
So
Okay.
3 months left. And
Were they paying you throughout or were they?
yeah, they're paying
Okay.
us throughout. They owed us $12,000. And I later found out that they actually had a very bad financial year. And I think that we were an easy way to save the money.
So some money, yeah.
Yeah. So, but the problem was that they didn't sign a contract. So I couldn't,
They didn't sign anything.
I didn't sign anything.
Oh, so it wasn't like you had a bad contract. You just
Oh,
didn't
well,
sign. You didn't do it.
I
It was a
actually wrote
handshake.
I actually wrote a contract. They just didn't sign it. And I never followed up,
Oh God.
which was my bad.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so
Lesson learned.
So now with every contract, I make sure it's signed. I make sure that like everyone's cool with the terms. Like it's all set before work is started.
So having a contract is so important, but I think most people need to learn by not having one first and then getting screwed.
Yeah.
Like I've done the same thing. Even though my first tenant I had in my house, I remember I didn't have him sign a contract. I'm like, "Hey, just stay for a year. Like if afterwards you don't want to, it's cool. But like just stay for I mean, who moves somewhere for less than a year anyway? It's like a pain in the ass to move all your stuff."
It's a lot.
And he moved in like 2 months and like kind of like, screwed me over and he's like, "Yeah, sorry, I didn't sign anything, so I'm out."
Oh
And
my
like he was
gosh.
told it was my fault. But after that, I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm never having anyone live in any property, whether I live in it or don't live in it, without a lease."
Yep.
Right? I'm never having someone join our martial arts school. I don't care if they're moving in 2 months. They're still filling out a membership agreement,
Yeah.
right, or a contract. So the experience you went through, I would say, is pretty common. I think where it's like you just get, or now it just be something wrong with your contract. Just like now, like I'll have tenants in apartments that I have that will have some sort of issue come up that's not in the lease, and then next time I add it to the lease, and it'll be better for the next one,
Yeah.
right? So, for instance, I have it written that if there's some sort of penalty, like maybe they got fined from the city for something,
Yeah.
and they owe $100 to the city, and I don't owe it, but they owe it, or they, were late on rent. Instead of me adding that bill and they pay it right away, I have it written that I could deduct it from the security deposit
Mm.
before I return it to them. So they can either
Right.
pay in advance, which I prefer, but if not, then I can deduct it from the security deposit.
Yeah.
And that's written in all my contracts now. So if that happens, it's like, oh, well, you didn't return the full amount. Like, yeah, you were late this day and this day, this day. I told you. Like, I'm always super nice about it. If they're late like one time, never going to do anything. But like,
Mhm.
if they're jerks about it, right?
Right.
So then, like, obviously, then I will make them adhere to the contract. Also, what I learned is you can't treat people differently in like one apartment, let's say, to another. So if I let a late fee go here, but don't over here, I could be sued for it. Yeah.
Wow,
So
I didn't know
like,
that.
yeah, I even have like a family member who is renting out one of my apartments, like a distant family member, but like sort of like a cousin. And I tell her, I'm like, hey, I literally can't. Like, is anyone most likely gonna find me and get me in trouble? No, I'm not. Super unlikely,
Right,
right? Like,
right,
it's like I have this sprawling, I don't know, giant apartment building in New York where they have 5 of them or something.
right.
But I still have to make them adhere to it because I could get in trouble. I don't want to risk it for myself.
Absolutely. That's also like another example of doing business, not treating it as like, ah, this is just my little thing. It's like, no, you're treating it like a
Yeah,
business,
even if it's family.
even if it's family,
Yeah.
because, we work with family members.
So one of the ways you and I connected was through a business class we both took
Hmm.
through Goldman Sachs called the 10,000 Businesses.
Yes.
And we both have had businesses that we've run before this, right? So I have the martial arts schools, and I have the consulting, which is what I went to a Double Your Dojo, by the way, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, what is the business he actually runs besides martial arts schools? I also do consulting for martial arts schools called Double Your Dojo. You can reach out to me, Matthew at doubleyourdojo.com if you have a question about it, or at Black Belt Brenner 1 on Instagram. But neither one of us has formal business education. In fact, that class that we took, which is a free program offered through Goldman Sachs, was the first business class I think I've ever taken.
Oh, same.
So, did you feel like you could start a business without going to getting a degree or a master's in business or something like that? Or did you feel like you needed something?
I mean, I did start I started when I was 22, start my business after I did a 4-month internship and was like, all right, done, did that, ready for my own thing.
Mhm.
And I had no business education. And, I figured it out in a lot of ways, mostly through trial and error. I think that it's really helpful if you can have some foundational business skills. And I think I got to the point in my business where I realized that if I really wanted to scale it, I had to get more knowledge around this. So that's why I did this. I knew that, I was trying to get to this level and there was something in the way and I needed something else.
Why not just like read a book or sign up for a course? Like, why a formal program?
For me, I learn best through like hands-on learning. I've never like I can like read a book about like one subject, but it was also, I needed help in like 8 different areas.
Okay.
It was like, it's not just like negotiating. It's
Yeah.
like I need to understand like first of all, I need some like business language because like I'm having a hard time like having conversations with professionals about like and by professionals I mean like financial advisors, accountants, lawyers. Like I needed language that could even help me have those conversations. And then I also didn't know what I really needed. I didn't know what I didn't know. And so for me, this was really helpful because it was holistic or more holistic than like reading a book on one topic.
Yeah. So you felt like you needed just formal structure.
I needed formal structure. I needed
Yeah.
also to like be in something that was like, this is your 100% focus. Because like I could read a book passively, but it would probably take me longer and I needed that.
So what was the result of the class? Like, how do you feel like you improved?
I think I figured out what I needed to learn.
Okay.
I hired a financial advisor
Okay.
who
Cool.
has been so great. He has like helped us improve our net profit margins by 8% in 3 months.
Wow.
So like real stoked about that.
Yeah.
He's helped me, or the program has helped me figure out like how to make my contracts stronger,
Okay.
better.
How'd you make them stronger? Is there certain language you put in there?
Definitely some language I put in there.
Okay.
I added in a few clauses.
Do you mind sharing? Just it just
Yeah,
might be able to help us. Yeah.
totally. So I think one of the best ones I added in is called the pause clause. So in our line of work, there's a lot of people who start projects and then due to one thing or another, they just kind of fall off the face of the earth. And we don't hear from them for like a month or two. But that's really tough for us in our like workflow. So if we don't hear from a client within 30 days, then their project is put on pause. And if they want to restart it, then there's a fee to restart the project.
Mm.
But that way, we're not just waiting around and holding the spot for work that we could fill with other projects.
Mm.
So that one's really, really,
That's a really good one.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
solid.
Yeah, we don't have any pause clause like that, but I really like the name of it. Pause
Isn't
clause.
it good? Yeah, it rolls
Sounds
off
like
the
some sort of
tongue.
Christmas thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I feel like there might be a way we could use something like that. Maybe
Yeah.
about people pausing their memberships
Right.
or something like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, we don't like people to pause. Like we just say, hey, finish your 12-month or finish your 6-month.
Right.
And if you don't, then let's say a month 10, or I don't want to do this anymore, we'll credit you that time for another time you want to use it. So if you want to use it, but for us, we're not project based, so it really doesn't
Yeah.
make the same impact as it does for you. But we'll tell them, hey, if you want to use this for another child, or you want to use it a year from now, you never lose credit for that. You can
That's
use it whenever
great.
you want.
But you don't issue refunds. It's just you keep credit.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, no refunds whatsoever under any circumstance.
That's good.
And also, there's a death. I think it's like death is, or
Sure.
if they move, right? Sometimes we'll have military families and move
Mm,
every 2 years, but we'll always know in advance, so it's not an issue, And
right.
like, so if like, hey, we usually do a 12-month membership, but hey, I'm only here for 10 months.
Yeah.
Like we'll write it in their membership that like, hey, they're moving to blah 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 town. This is 10-month membership. Then it makes sense for them, right? Like you're doing what's
Right.
best for the client, which is totally fine. It's
Totally.
just the ones that are the most frustrating is people when they disappear,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So what would you say to someone who is running a business? They're in their early 20s and
hmm
they want to start a business, but they don't have a business education. Would you recommend they go to school right away, or would you recommend they started the business and figure out what they actually need? Like, what route would you tell them to go?
Yeah. So this, I don't know if this is a popular opinion, but I don't recommend any higher education unless you need it. And by higher education, I mean like master's, like grad program. Like unless you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or a psychologist, I think that there are so many free resources out there that you don't need to go, $60,000 in debt to do a 2-year master's program. Unless you have that kind of financial, if you have that, then like great. I do think that the best way to get business experience is by being in business and find a mentor quickly. That's one thing that was really instrumental for me is I've had 3 different mentors throughout my career who have kind of helped me understand like you're having an issue here. That's probably because you don't have XYZ or you need to learn about this thing. So I would tell someone in their 20s starting a business to like consult with other people, talk to other business owners, figure out who is running a business the way that you want to be doing that. Ask them questions and then start. And along the way, continue to seek out mentors and other people. Stay humble and, ask questions. And then if you get to a point where you really do feel like you need something more in like business education, that's when it's worth it to look for I would say a free program to start because as an entrepreneur, it's hard financially to build a business. So find something free. There's so many free resources out there.
Yeah, and the business class we took, if you're listening, is called the Goldman Sachs 10K SB, and it's a free course. You have to have a certain amount of revenue. You have to be accepted. You have to apply. So it's not like anyone can join, but it is free.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, and it's well, I think the background story for that, I mean, I'm grateful Goldman Sachs does this, but the background story is pretty funny. Like Goldman Sachs did some shady stuff, and then the government is like, okay, instead of just paying a fine, you have to set aside a certain amount of money for like business education. So now I made this program that is really just a way of them paying a fine. They wouldn't be doing it if they weren't,
Yeah.
got in trouble. But now they come off as like this sanctimonious. Look what we're doing for the community. It's like, yeah, well, it's only because you screwed up and did a bunch of other shady crap.
Yeah.
I don't know what those exact
100%.
things were, but
Like they were shady.
yeah, banks are
Yeah.
always getting in trouble and having to spend, but it's I mean, it still does the world good, right? So if you're gonna get in trouble and punish someone, if you're able to punish someone that's not just hurting them but actually helps other people,
Yeah.
then what better way is there to repent?
100%. I actually think that's like such a great way to deal with like corporations that do shady shit.
Yeah.
Is like you should set up a program that's free for people to have resources and like build up the community. I think that's great.
So now that you have had experience with Kelsey and his foundation, and you did some stuff with some other athletes, like what do you feel like you've learned from that like experience of working with high net worth and also high, people with like a strong following? Like what have you learned from those experiences from working with those types of people?
Yeah, I found it so rewarding to work with these athletes because a couple things. The first is that the guys that I've worked with all have this mentality that literally anything is possible. And I think you have to have that mentality in order to be a professional football player, because what you're doing, like to be at that level, is 1 in a million. And so working with people who have that mentality and that attitude that like let's dream it up and let's do it is so inspiring. So I really liked working with people at that level. It's also incredible because the impact we can make with their platform and with our skill set is just incredible. It feels so cool to, with the Christmas album, we raised $1.4 million and it all got donated to charity. So the fact that I got to do the artwork for a project that grossed that kind of revenue and was donated to charities like the Children's Crisis Treatment Center in Philly and, all different organizations felt so gratifying. So I like working with people at that level because we can have such a huge impact.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
You get to see in like a grand scale, like, oh, we're not selling 12 more pizzas, which is nice.
Yeah, we all love pizza.
Yeah.
No shade on pizza, but
yeah, but $1 billion to, something that's going to help kids or whatever. What is the charity?
So CCTC, it's a Children's Crisis Treatment Center.
Children, there you go.
They're
Anything that
children.
helps kids, that's like the kind of charity I want.
Yeah. But the crazy thing is they actually donated, I think it was $250,000 to CCTC, but there was so much money left over that every person involved on the record, all the musicians, they got to choose a charity of their choice and donated $50,000.
Wow, that's super cool.
Which is such an amazing thing to do.
So if someone wants to reach out to you for branding and they want to get maybe a website or branding, or they think the services might be for them, but they're not sure, how do they find out?
Yeah. So first, check out our website, avenuewest.design.
Say that one more time.
avenuewest.design.
.design. Okay.
You can also check out our Instagram at avenue_west. And feel free to reach out to me directly, Hannah at avenuewest.design. I'm happy to answer any questions and talk more about branding and design services and see if that's something you could benefit from.
Thank you very much for listening. My name is Matthew Brenner with the Black Belt Business Podcast. You can reach me on Instagram at blackbeltbrenner1 or Matthew at doubleyourdojo.com. Thanks, guys.